said I wanted to be on the panel. Um, we got the response that, um, or I got the response that they had selected someone to take up that position that was a little more, quote unquote, our voices. Now, I had to look that up. Honestly, I had no idea what in the world they were talking about. But basically, what it comes down to is that they decided, and they meaning a person not black, you know, had decided that they were going to choose someone who was more, I guess, authentic with regard to, their writing and their blackness. So, and this is a person who has, I mean, I've been black for as long as I know all my life. So, I'm pretty much, feeling that American fiction statement when he says, well, they want a black book. I said, well, I'm black and it's my book. So it's a black book, right? But we get this pushback a lot when we are writing. And we want to talk a little bit about that concept then of this conflict of what our voices means, especially in light of what we have seen in American fiction, which Cord Jefferson won a Best Adapted Screenplay for from the book by Percival Everett. So, I mean, anybody just, jump on in, but I want to ask, I guess, generally, I know, Sonia, your background is in media and communications, correct?
Correct.
Right? And Otto, your background is, kind of uh, academic and legal and banking and things of that ilk, correct?
Well, those allegations are yet to be confirmed, but yeah.
Okay. And Cranston, your background is you're a librarian. You have been an actual librarian, correct?
Yes,
All
40
right.
years.
Yeah. And so when you all first saw this, I guess I'll just go down the line. Cranston, when you first saw the trailer for American Fiction or you were told about it, what was your response? How did you feel? Did you have one of those visceral responses?
Well, it was visceral, not in a bad way, but just in a nod your head. And yeah, I've seen that before and heard that before, because these are situations that you find yourself in. And if you are a creator, at some point you've had that experience that you've either tried to explain why something should be one way and it's seen another way, and you find that people who speak very definitively about what the Black experience is tend not to be Black people. And you always want to ask them, why do you think that is the case? And one thing that happened to me was I had a security guard that I worked with. And we would always have these like really dumb conversations, usually about, UFOs and flying saucers or something like that. But one day, somehow, and I don't know how we got there, it was discussion about people's roles in society. And at one point, he said, without any trace of irony, very passionately, but don't you think that your people were given things that my people had to fight for? And you take a minute, you said, did he really say that or something like that? So I kind of explained that to him why, I was like born in this country. So you didn't have to give me anything. I had it because I was like born here.
Right?
And we never had that serious a conversation again. But you find that a lot that other people make decisions about what roles people who are not them occupy in society, and you cannot explain to them why they are wrong. They just figure, well, you just don't understand.
Wow. Okay, how about you, Sonia? When you saw the first trailer, what was your response? And, how did you feel?
First response was, "Oh my God!" Okay, there's a stage play called American Moore. That's a one-man play by Keith Hamilton Cobb, and Moore is Moor, and it talks about some of his experiences being a black actor. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, there's some similarity there." And then I thought, "Oh, wait, there's similarity everywhere. We've all, whether it's black women, especially black women, aren't supposed to be having certain roles in society. Um, I remembered my high school, not high school, it was college, when my first roommate didn't realize I was a black woman because we had only talked on the phone. And I definitely did not sound black to her. So she had
Hmm.
already had preconceptions of what a black roommate would be.
Wow.
Um, and then um, and professionally, I was told by a prominent football coach that black women aren't producers for TV. They just
Wow.
go and get the coffee and things like that.
Wow.
So it did strike home that like roles. Well, wait, what are there actually his thought was there are no black people in television. And
Huh.
I was like, sir, you're in a TV booth with several of them every weekend when you talk sports.
Hmm.
So I wasn't a black woman and I had no really interest in sports. So what was I doing there?
Wow.
Like,
Huh. All right.
so
So, how
yeah.
about you, Otto?
Well, when I saw the trailer, I was like, "Where have you been all my life?"
Hmm.
It's like, I love that we take a satirical look at people putting us, when I say us, black people, into a box, right? There's Oreos, Penelope, and then there's chocolate Oreos. Okay,
Yeah.
both are cookies based on your favor. One may be more delicious than the other, but they're both authentic Nabisco products, right?
Right.
So it's like you don't actually get to define what Oreo is. Nabisco does.
Hmm.
No one gets to define my blackness. My parents or
Hmm.
even my parents. I mean, basically, I decide who I am, and based on who I am, and like Popeye, I am what I am, and I'm black, and I'm all these
Yeah.
other things too. So I was
Right.
happy to see that.
Yeah.
Very happy to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that one of the issues, I mean, when we kind of now and then between us talk about the fact that when you are a black person, and like Sonia touched on it, and you walk into the room, people have preconceived notions of what it is that you should be like, or what it is that our writing or our voice should be. And I've kind of started thinking that what people mean when they say our voice is an authentic black voice is what they mean some level of trauma porn, and everything has to be like this on the nose. It cannot be allegory, it cannot be analogy, cannot be,
No,
anything
because you
flick or
don't have
fable. It
the
has to be like, it has to be direct, uh, very linear,
yeah.
and
It
in
has to
order
be
Mono
for
like
our, so
black
that's
people
right.
because
monolithic.
Yes.
black people don't have the capacity to be satirical or to be tongue in cheek
Or ironic or snarky.
ironic.
Yeah.
There's nothing funny and precious. Okay,
No,
there's
it's just
Well,
you
again right on the nose.
you can be funny, but you have to be a certain funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what's that?
yeah you don't
Funny
get
or funny or dangerous funny that
right.
way.
right. You could
Or
be
A
I love Richard
buffoon.
Pryor. I love Richard Pryor. You could be either a Richard Pryor funny, but you can't be a Steve Martin funny. You
You
know,
can't just make up stuff and be silly because
yeah,
that's inauthentic.
yeah. Like
You're,
what's the name of that comedian? The guy who's people making fun of all the time with the big orange hair. Or what's his name? What's the guy's name?
Carrot Top.
Carrot Top, yeah.
Yeah, there's no black carrot top, right?
Yeah, because they would say if you did that, that wasn't funny. That's
Right.
inauthentic. You're not talking about your
Based
pain.
on the color of my
Yeah.
skin.
You have to come talk about your pain, and it has to be again very linear and very one-dimensional. That, it's very rare that you get to see a story that the gatekeepers open the door for that talks about an experience with Black people where it's layered, where you're talking about different things. Even if it is a different time period, different people involved. It is all about their trauma, but overcoming, not just telling a story is very rare that gets out there. In fact, I mean, if
Or
you think about it, we think about even something like Black Panther, that okay, we get this, really great science fiction-y superhero film, but he's telling another story at the same time.
Which
And
I love.
that's, yeah, and that was fantastic. And that's the thing that they don't, realize that that this is something that we write. We're telling stories on different levels, but unless you have a
but
lot of
Penelope,
trauma in it, it's usually not going to, be able to make it through, or some sort of ghettoized story, because then that's something people understanding to be a Black person story, like in American fiction. He
well,
wrote,
Penelope is this, but
yes,
Penelope, the thing is that we saw a Spike Lee film, the Spike School Days. We
mhm,
saw it in Philadelphia,
yes,
and we saw it with a mostly African American Black audience.
yes,
There was some smattering of Anglo people there, but there was some parts of the movie that were funny, and some parts of the movie that are obviously sad, right?
right,
And it was just amazing to me in some sort of anthropological observation that white people laughed at the wrong parts. They laughed at the sad parts,
mhm.
you know.
Oh, I mean, I remember specifically this one part where the main character's Mookie hooks up with the head of their Big Brother Almighty's girlfriend at the Big Brother Almighty's insistence. And so when you're in this audience, primarily of Black people, they're all like, oh no, oh no, don't do it, don't do this horrible thing. And then the Angles are, yeah, go Mookie, do that thing. It's
Well,
us. But I think, but it's like, you're not supposed to do that. That was the point of the scene, that it was
because
a
they think
terrible thing to do.
because the person that told you our voice is a white person that told you that your voice was not authentic enough came from the position of I know everything there is to know about African Americans and and their experience based on media and everything else. So therefore, your experience, which does not match up with what I know, is inauthentic.
Right. And, when you're writing, a book, for instance, I write horror, science fiction, adult targeted, meaning graphic sex, graphic violence, that when I'm writing a story, I'm not just writing a story. Of course, it's vampires, they're hybrids, they're Renfields, and I'm talking about African American people being a hybrid, living in a society where they are a minority and they have their own talents, but regardless of how talented you are, you better be careful. So all this is going on in the story, but they can't see it because they don't understand that to be our story. They understand our story to be, you're out somewhere, like in Good Times. Don't even get started with that new Good Times.
Well, you're going to wind up. Your book is going to wind up in the Black Studies section or whatever, in American fiction, whatever
Yeah,
section he ended up in. Although it
African
had nothing
American
to do.
studies. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Why is it there?
yeah. It has
I
nothing to
mean,
do with that, right?
Does James Joyce wind up in the Irish Studies section, or is there Irish section or something? It doesn't make any sense. It's a book, and you identify by the category, not by its author.
Yeah,
Well, because they make the assumption that it's all the same story. It's just a variation of the one thing that comes out, and that's where it all has to go.
yeah.
It's kind of like the thing about if you write a certain thing that's just a story, but then it gets elevated to something higher than that. But if you
Hmm.
look at the similarity of the things that are generally accepted, is that elevated thing is basically the same story. It's about somebody overcoming some tragedy or hardship or negative situation, and that's it. It's like every day when you get up and everything. I forget who the comedian was that they said they look in the mirror and they say, "Well, how oppressed am I going to be today?" And
Right.
that's not what your everyday life is.
Right.
Right.
Well, I found that particular scene funny because he was finally being recognized as a Black author, but he was upset because it's about mythology and it wasn't in the mythology section. So
Yeah,
it's like,
because, well, I mean, he's not really being recognized as a Black author.
well, yeah, but
He
it
is
was
being
it was
pigeonholed as a type of book, which is, African American studies. But it
right.
wasn't African American studies. They didn't even
Yeah.
bother to read it.
No,
They
they
just said it
just
was written by a Black
Black
writer, so
matter.
therefore it's
So,
African
but
American
right.
studies.
So he's finally being recognized for being a Black writer, but for the wrong reason.
I don't know if that's it. For
I know
me,
me either.
I'm
Yeah,
not a
because
writer.
he was moving it from the African. He always said, "I know they don't recognize I'm Black enough. I belong and but he finally got put into the black section, and he moves it to the mythology section because that's where it should be. That's what it was about. So
I
I,
it's
don't
I
like,
think
don't I
that.
don't I don't
No, I
know.
I kind of disagree with that. I don't think that
I
that
don't,
was the point.
I'm not a writer. I'm a consumer, and I say that all the time. I remove tags from pillows and stuff because I am the consumer. But the thing is that if I was looking for his book and I was looking for something on mythology, and they had his book in that section, I would have totally missed it. If I came into a bookstore and I was looking for a book
Yeah,
that
yeah. I'm looking
they
for
I
any
would miss
book,
his book. I wouldn't go
yeah,
over to the African American
but
Studies section.
every
to see
but
something on the Peloponnesian War.
yeah,
You
but
No, I
know,
wouldn't
they
do it.
you know.
but they should put it in both sections. He's both of,
No, it
they
shouldn't be
should
in
have
Oh
both
a back,
sections.
no!
he should
Oh
be a,
no!
It
No, they
should be
should
in both
not.
sections.
It should
It
only
should
be in
only be
this
in the
this
section which is
section
which
because
is the
it's
subject.
not African American authors. It's
Mhm.
African American studies, and it's not African American. So not if they had a section that's just African American authors. Okay, I get you. I would think okay that makes sense. But it wasn't African American authors. It's African American studies. But it wasn't African American studies. It was I think it's either Peloponnesian War or something of
But
that
look,
ilk
yeah,
that was
but
about.
if I wrote a book about Odysseus, right?
Right.
Why would you put my book in the African American Studies section? Because I'm black.
Yeah, that
Why
makes no
would you put my
sense.
that's what they think of. If it's written by a black author, it's
Right, right.
automatically
but it
African
shouldn't be in
American
both, is
studies.
what I'm saying. It
Yeah, but it
shouldn't be in
shouldn't
both.
be.
It should
I
be
It
would
should.
in
put in both so you can get both
Oh
audiences.
no,
no, because
I
but
wouldn't.
you'll never sell. Then you cutting my sales in half because I'm not looking for a black person that wrote about Odysseus. I don't care who
I
writes
just
what the color
yeah.
of
I'm looking
skin.
for
I don't care the
Odysseus.
color of the skin of the person who wrote about Odysseus. I want to write about Odysseus. I want to read about
Right,
Odysseus.
right. It doesn't matter who wrote it. I'm just looking for Odysseus right now. Um.
Real
Okay.
life
What do you say,
experience.
a librarian?
Librarian, what section would you put it in?
Real life experience. I was this was way back when the King Tut exhibit was touring the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in college then, and so there were of course it was a mixed dormitory, so me and my roommate who were black lived across the hall from these two white guys, right? And so we're talking about general stuff we always do, but then the conversation always turns. And so they were talking about the Crane Tut exhibit, and my roommate mentioned that, well, that all of those people were black. And the white guy said, no, that couldn't be true. What happened, I had a book, wonderful book, it's called Great Civilizations of Ancient Africa. And it talks about great civilizations of ancient Africa. So we're showing them these pictures and saying, now
Mm-hmm.
you look at us and you look at you. And who does he look like more than somebody else? And it kind of had to concede that, well, yeah. And we kept going, showing up all of these things. And the more we would bring up these
Mm-hmm.
differences and everything, they were getting a little bit, you get that kind of look on your face like there's something you don't quite understand,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't figure out what it is. And so they were just sort of like slipping away, thinking that their whole lives have been, they've been lied to.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them suddenly said, was that book written by a white guy or a black guy? And I said, well, it was written by a black guy. And then they both relaxed because it was written by a black guy. It was true for black people, but it wasn't true for everybody else.
Ha.
And so that's the kind of disparity you get, that there are certain things that they figure that, and they don't see the irony in the point
Mm-hmm.
that if you're white, you can write about black people all the time and you just take it at face value.
Right.
But you are a black person writing about anything, it has to be that viewed through that lens that is not really scholarship.
Right.
If you do that, and
When
there's
you write it, it's opinion and not scholarship.
yeah, or it's just fantasy. There's a book called Counter Knowledge, which is about all the things that are written about that are just not true. And in fact, half of the book was about how anything that black people write about what is generally considered black studies or Afrocentric studies is fantasy. It's not true.
Wow. And so that's why you don't get to be in the general studies category for
Yeah.
whatever it is that you have written, because they
Hmm.
want people to understand that not just a great probability, but uh, definite possibility that this is all fabricated or unsupported,
Unless it's something
unless.
that validates a general opinion they hold, and
Okay.
not to disparage anybody and stuff, because we're all friendly
Hmm.
here and stuff. But I think that's why I can't, and his name just left my head. But the guy who wrote the book about the N word and stuff, that was the thing a few years ago, that his work is generally lauded by the general public,
Hmm.
everybody but Black people, as being an authentic voice and somebody who needs to be heard and that kind of thing. And sometimes whenever I see him in a public appearance and he says some of these things, I say, "What planet did you come from?" Because match anything that I have ever experienced or that I could really get behind.
Hmm.
Well,
So
it's
I.
the problem is that you have Anglo people who want to define what Black voices are, and
Mhm.
it because they heard it from some Black person, and they want it, and they want that to be definitive, right?
Hmm.
That's it. They want a simple answer. This is Black voices. This is what it sounds like. This is where it
Hmm.
comes from. You know, it's
Yeah,
like this.
but it was kind of, well, I mean, those of you all who know this, know that have listened to the show. I told a story about when I was a young woman. I was in high school. I didn't want to read Huck Finn because it had, the N word all laced throughout. And then my teacher, and I complained because I thought it was offensive because the kids who were reading Of Mice and Men didn't have to read it if they thought that the curse words were offensive. So I said, well, why is it that I have to read this thing with words in it that I think are offensive, and other people don't have to read books with words that they think are offensive? And her response was, well, wasn't anybody calling anybody the N-word? It's what the black people call each other, right?
Each other,
Right.
each
I
other.
said, and I
That
didn't
makes it
have,
authentic.
that's right, I didn't have the support or the people behind me or the nomenclature, I guess, to speak, as a high school student dealing with this teacher, but to say, but who wrote the book? You know, Samuel Clemens is not a black man.
But
He
understand
doesn't
this.
know what black people say to
I
each
don't
other
have
when
to
they're in
be
private.
for Penelope. The answer is always is. I don't have to be a chicken to write about an egg.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if you're writing a story about what black people say to each other in private, how do you know what that is? And so you put forward that this is an authentic black voice, and then down the line, for the rest of our lives, our grandparents, great grandparents, our children's lives, that this becomes an authentic voice
It's
because
authentic.
this guy said so,
That's
not
right.
because any black person said so. That may not be the way we talk about each other. Same thing, like a lot of people watch The Wire, which I thought was absolute garbage. And again, one of the reasons why is it's like in my mind, this the white man on safari, that they go into the community and they decide not just what it is that they see or what they have picked up, what they're going to write about, but how it is that black people react to each other within their homes when no one else is there. That they can determine,
Right.
like they used to say, Otto, where JJ in the good times would wear a hat in the
Mm-hmm.
house. But simply because he wears a hat outside the house does not mean that he will wear a hat inside the house. His parents say, take off that hat when you come in the
Right. Take off
house.
the hat. So
Right,
Penelope, the thing is, we all know that chickens cluck, right?
right, right,
I don't have to tell you that chickens cluck.
right, right,
And so we get some show when chickens don't cluck, that they're talking like people. These are inauthentic chickens. Okay.
right,
Because
right,
every time I hear chicken or I'm around a chicken, it clucks.
right,
I have no, but the reality is I have no idea what chickens do or
right.
necessarily say when I'm not there. But we can all agree on one point. This is what chickens sound like. So
Right,
we,
but again,
the
but
black
and
voice,
that makes perfect sense. But again, we did this also with the talking animal show.
the
But
talking animal,
who is the
right,
talking animal really? But in this
right,
instance, if we're black people, if you want to know what I'm saying, I'm not a clucking chicken. You can ask me, and I
right,
will tell you what's said.
right. But
But you
see, I'm
don't want to
asking.
know because you already have an idea about how you want to paint black
Well,
people
you can
so
either
that you
sound
remain on
like
safari.
Penelope, a black person. There's a menu of black people. I can say that someone sounding like James Baldwin is authentic.
Yes.
Or someone sounding like Tyler Perry dressed up as Medea is authentic.
Yes.
I'm more comfortable with Tyler Perry speaking like Medea because I see more of those. Don't see a whole lot of James Baldwin talking people.
Yeah, but
So I'm gonna go with
because you
the
say you're finding that information from where? From the media. It's like what is in the film Hollywood Shuffle, when at the end you have the writer who is saying that he's writing these lines for black people because they are based on what he saw on television, which of course, by and large, is something that was probably already written by a white person, or if it was written by a black person, we understand that, back in the day, say you had a story that you wanted to write a lovely love story about, two people that they would, the gatekeepers would say, well, that's not gonna fly, where's the cursing, where's the shooting, where's the drugs, they want this concept that they have of what your community should be like, which they created. um that's the authenticity that they want
well,
to see.
remember the movie that forget the name of it, Regina King was in it. It was about a black couple that was in love, and they lived in Harlem. And I think the black boyfriend, they were married, getting married, and they were going to live in a loft in downtown New York.
Oh
I
yeah,
forgot the
what is
name
that
of it,
film?
but one of the criticisms of the film was that it was too beautiful,
Because it's about black people living in New York City in the
and it
70s
had
or
it showed
60s,
no, not even yep, just late
the
50s,
late
early
50s or
60s.
60s. Yeah.
Yeah, it had too many, colors in it. The black people in it weren't uh dressed shabbily.
Yeah, right, right,
They all had jobs, they had issues, everyone has issues, right?
right.
But the fact of the matter is it just looked too beautiful. When I have my blackness, I have my drink of blackness, I want it rough. I don't I don't want Cosby Show. I
Yeah,
want Wire.
yeah,
Otherwise it's inauthentic.
yeah.
But
I'm
that was one
particular.
of the interesting
Hmm.
things about the movie is that, especially when they got the committee that was going to choose the writer,
Yes.
and that all of the three whites on the committee all felt that this book was just the best thing they read, while disparaging books by white writers because of their this, that, and the other. But they
Hmm.
didn't seem to think that this black book was in that category. It was just this wonderful thing. And one thing that happened throughout is that the white characters, whenever they had an interaction with a black character, like and hopefully not a spoiler if anybody hasn't seen the movie, but the scene where Monk meets with the producer and he's talking about how he spent like 2 nights in jail or something like that, so
Hmm.
he knows what the jail experience is like, and he could tell this thing was valid. And so when you hear the siren outside, the first thing that I thought watching that was the same thing that Monk obviously thought, something happened to his
Yes,
mother.
yes.
And that's why he was panicked and just ran out the door to
Hmm.
see about his mother. But of course, when he talks with his agent says he saw that same thing happen and said that what it could only mean was he thought the police were coming for him.
Right, right,
He had to go and flee.
right. Amazing. Also, I like the fact that Issa Rae, I thought she did an excellent job in the film, and playing a role that was like Zora Neale Hurston, because the book that I mean, the trailer has her reading from this book, and it is so, in my mind, just wow. What did you say? You ain't be pregnant, Sharonda, or something. I mean, I'm like, whoa.
Mhm.
And then when the two of these writers get together, Monk and what is her name in this? Carrier or something like that, that they
Yeah.
get together and they're talking about the book. She looks at his book and says that it is, I guess she said it was inauthentic, or that
Yeah. It was
pandering.
condescending.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pandering was the word. But he said, but isn't that kind of like your book? And she's like, well, no, her book is not, because she went out and did research, and these people have, these actual kind of lives. And,
Research.
Yeah, she researched,
which is
and
what
and it
never heard of
reminds.
the Heisenberg principle or anything like research.
Right, right.
Mhm.
But it reminds me of Zora Neale Hurston, who a lot of people thought was especially during the Harlem Renaissance, the way that she wrote, where she's chronicling how people speak, with the broken English and, writing that, in a book. And a lot of Black people are offended by that. But she would also say that the reason she's writing this is because this is the way that the people were actually talking when they spoke to her. And, I think that you have these two conflicts. I know the conflict of our voices with that. On the one hand, do you get certain people and this is the way they speak and you put it out there in the world, but without any preamble? I think that's the problem. To speak about these, put this out here without any preamble.
Do you
Uh,
need a preamble?
Context.
well, I'm going to content. Well, I'm going to say,
Context.
right.
Do you need it?
Well, I was thinking in terms of, remember years ago, Padma Lakshmi was doing that food show, and she had the people who were living, the Gullah Geechee people, in the South Carolina area, and she was saying that, people in that area, some of the accent is that they would say, screet, scraw, for street and straw. And she said
Right.
it was because historically, where people who were from the Gullah Geechee Coast were from, that the language did not have that STR blend.
Right.
So that consonant blend didn't exist. So this is why people said screet and scraw. Now, I grew up with cousins who said things like screet and scraw, and we were laughing, ha, ha, ha. They say screet and scraw. But, then I was like, man, I wish I could go back to my younger self. But now, as an adult, looking at it, it's like, people act as if it was ignorance, but it wasn't ignorance.
Yeah,
It
I'm
was a
not laughing at that.
dialect. Yeah,
That's
but I'm
not
just
laughing
saying,
at
it was a dialect. And
right.
the thing is that we don't learn about the fact that these things are dialects like anyone else, any other
Right.
immigrant that came to this country and had a dialect, but for us, they try to make it appear that it's ignorance.
Yeah,
That's
and we did it among ourselves. But by the way,
because that's what we were groomed and told.
the movie
Mhm.
I was referring to it was James Baldwin, If Beale Street Could Talk.
Yes, right. If Bill Street could talk, that's the film. Yeah, it's a gorgeous
That's the
film.
film. They said that was too gorgeous to
Yeah,
depict a black existence.
it's a gorgeous film though. I really enjoyed it.
What
I would have changed the ending, but still.
for authenticity is right.
Right.
It's like you need to look like real black. You need to look like, I mean, you in American fiction when Jeffrey Wright's character Monk is writing the book because he's so angry about being put into a corner. He has the two great actors, right, portray the two characters, the father and the son.
Yes.
And that's like one of the best part of the movie. It's
Yeah.
like that's one of
Brilliant.
the
It was
best
brilliant.
It's absolutely brilliantly acted, brilliantly written,
Brilliantly directed.
And that's
brilliantly
how,
directed.
yeah, when I write, that's how I see it too. I see the characters playing it out. So that actually that was probably the most real feeling scene for me because of, oh wait, they even figured out how I write, and seeing things like that. You do see the characters going, so what do you want me to say now? Or what do you want me to do now?
Hmm.
And especially when you're not writing a scene that you are particularly feeling comfortable about.
Well, I'm going to tell you the thing about that scene that got me is that as he's writing these characters and they're talking to each other and he's writing down these uh adjectives, describing their physicality. It's like his big thick black lips. I mean, he's trying to be
Big
as
black lips and
aggressive
my
as he
midnight
can. Yeah.
midnight
Not
skin.
midnight.
Chocolate
No.
skin. No,
Coal
first
black,
it was,
coal
well, yeah,
black
but it started
skin.
out chocolate.
Yeah, then it's just
It's
it's
coal
midnight. No, it's
black.
coal black skin. And he just tries to just, turn the
And
knife,
here's the
stick it,
thing.
turn the
This
knife,
is the
man.
thing. This is the thing. This is not a guy who grew up in that environment.
It is
He
not.
doesn't know anything about any of that at all. Zero about it.
And he's
So
just
he's
making
just
it up.
writing. He's just making it. He might as well be an Anglo person
Right.
making it up.
Right.
But
Just make it
because
up.
if the thing is, if an Anglo person wrote that, right, that would be like totally burned to the ground, right? But if a black
Probably.
person wrote, wrote the same sort of propaganda and story,
Hmm.
then it's raised up, right? Because it's so-called authentic.
Authentic. Exactly.
Nobody here want to hear anybody who's an Ivy League graduate. What the heck? I want to get the pure sauce, the undiluted pure sauce. I don't want the sauce that's
Yeah.
been diluted by education and by manners and
What is
by
it?
all
Yeah.
these
Well,
other
yeah,
things.
right.
You think some college kid could come up with stuff like that?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, right,
I want
right.
the pure
Exactly.
stuff. I want the stuff that, when I drive by in my car on my way to work, I see it going on the street, and I already wonder to myself, boy, if I stop there, I could be killed. But I'm on my way home. I'm on my way to work. I better not
Yeah,
stop. So
yeah.
I want that. That's what I want. I want that in the safety of my home, right?
Hmm.
I don't want some college educated punk,
Hmm.
writing something of his depiction. As Penelope, as you said, I want authentic our voices, our
Yes.
voices.
Because that's the only
Although
voice we can
although
have.
the people, if you're talking about poor Black people,
Mhm.
in this country that are miseducated and uneducated and underserved, they don't have the ability to voice what they really want to say because
Mhm.
America made it certain that they don't. They don't want to hear that voice. They
Well,
want to
one
hear
of
the
the
voices
things,
that they think is true.
Mhm.
one of the things that I loved about the screenplay, which definitely deserved its win, was that they did the thing that they tell you to do in writing, is that you show and don't tell.
Mhm.
And so there was this one scene with no dialogue, but Monk is walking through the house and the television is on, and they're talking about this was a celebration of Black culture and this kind of thing, and they're
Mhm.
showing clips of all the things that represent, and it's every cliche that you've ever
Yes.
seen of everything and stuff, drug addiction, single mothers, people
Mhm.
shooting each other, and all this kind of
Yes.
thing. And all the this narration is talking about how it's celebrating the Black experience, and
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
and it's something
Exactly.
else. And so that's it. It's like, that's considered the Black experience. And if it's anything other than that, then that makes it inauthentic, or that's not
Right.
really real, or that doesn't happen, or.
But the
Yeah.
problem is that reality that society puts up as being authentic Black, those people who are subject to that, they don't get to write and speak, and
Right.
and and they don't get to publish. They never make it to market, and society makes certain that they don't. And so now you get someone who says, I went and did research.
Mhm.
Instead of somebody, you don't have to do research on your life.
Right.
So I don't need to do research to know how Black people are.
Well, but
There's no
understand there,
research I
but
need to do.
but right, but understand if you're saying, for instance, that someone like Zora Neale Hurston was like Monk for that, for this, that he didn't grow up in that type of environment. Maybe she didn't grow up in that type of environment, or partially went during the summers, to visit grandma and heard people speak that way, and that she is having to do research. But again, like you say, we're dealing with the Heisenberg principle. You're coming there to talk to someone. Are they being authentic in their interview?
What insanity would it be if you went up to your mother's your grand aunt or something and
Hmm.
say, I need to do some research on you so I make sure that I get your dialect right? That's
Yeah, yeah,
insane.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
your life. What are you
Hmm.
researching?
Yeah,
It's not.
but yeah, but you understand, that people say I don't know how people live, how they get into the positions, but understand this too, that at our root, people don't want to be seen as, quote unquote losers, right? So when someone asks you, Sharonda, why did this thing happen to you? Is a great probability that Sharonda is going to alter the narrative from what it really
Yeah,
was to
exactly.
what they think it is that the person who's doing the interview wants to hear. So,
Sharonda, and let's be clear. I've spoken to many Sharondas in my life.
Mhm.
Sharonda is not going to speak to a white man the way Sharonda speaks to me.
Right.
That's the reality too.
Yeah, but
So,
Sharonda will speak to the Azora Neale Hurston character and
Right.
tell that
But you know
person,
what?
uh
People, made to
but
come to
still, but
defense
still,
defense. But
hmm
to me, it's you do no service to Sharonda by telling her story that way.
hmm
You tell Sharonda's story in a way that's most people are able to communicate and
right,
understand.
and not be
Understand that,
distracted. I think that's
right,
to write it in. There's a distraction.
right, right. Because Catcher in the Rye and F. Scott Fitzgerald's stories, they're not written that way. They're not written in that same sort of I need to speak in an authentic voice
hmm
kind of way. That's not how people who live on Long Island Sound. So that's not how people who live on Long Island sound all the
hmm
time. Okay, it just isn't.
hmm So I think that, and how, I mean, we go a long way to talk about, we're just kind of speaking, our visceral responses to what we saw, but is there a way that we think you could approach people to, let them know this is actually what you should be doing, how you should be doing, how we would prefer to be
Penelope, I think there's some
addressed?
questions. I think there's some questions.
Oh yeah, and I see. Thank you for letting me know because I'm completely not looking. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Because the audience. So please, yeah, we're about 10 minutes or 15 minutes out. So yeah, we'll take some questions. Oh, what are your thoughts on the new movie, The American Society of Magical Negroes?
That's next on my list. Darn it! I
Oh
knew I should have
wow.
watched it already.
Well, yeah, the thing is, I gotta say, I was not planning ever to watch it, and so I think it'd be a good idea, Sonia, to say why you have it on your list, and I'll say, or anybody else to say why you do or don't have it on your list.
Okay, why it's on my list. I've always been fascinated by the trope of what people considered the magical Negro.
hmm
And I'm hoping that this is giving the black person's take, even though I saw some reviews on it that wasn't so positive. I just wanted to see what other people had to say about that device, literary device, and
And
and to see if it matched up with anything I had been taught.
I
That's
don't I
it.
don't plan on Penelope really quick. I don't plan on saying
Sure.
it.
hmm
How is it that somebody's going to name something a magical Negro? What are you calling me, a leprechaun? I'm not magic. I'm a black man. I'm not a magical device or
hmm
some sort of talisman.
hmm
I'm not interested in that.
Okay. How about you, Cranston? Are you?
I'm still going to see it, but my opinion of it changed, or at least could be a misconception on my part that comes from the longer trailer. And it seems that the guy who's recruited into the society gets interested in a non-black woman, and that's
hmm
going to like violate the thing about it. And I said, well, you're trying to say that this is really a thing saying you have to love who you love no matter what. And to me, that seemed like, well, that's a different type of savior syndrome. So
Uh-huh.
I'm going to be fair and watch it to see how that plays out. But it turned from being something that could have been, in my opinion, a speaking out on a trope into a rom com. And I said, I don't know. So we will see.
hmm
You're not taking 2 hours out of my life. I'm not doing it.
Well, I don't intend to see it either, and I think one of the reasons why I don't intend to see it is because, um, especially this relationship with this woman, and people think, well, you love who you love, and it really doesn't
Mhm.
matter. But if that's the case, then why wasn't the love interest a black woman? Because that would mean that the white male would have to have been chasing her.
Mhm.
So that is the thing. They talk, they give lip service to it, but it really isn't really honest because a black woman could have been the individual that was the love interest, and to approach it from that especially when you have the guy, and this is another thing that kind of made me think, what was the point? Because the persons who had done the review were indicating they made such a big deal of the guy basically saying that his only one of his parents was black. So basically, you are not, coming to this saying I'm a black guy and I'm trying to make decisions. You're saying I'm a person who's not really a black guy, So I get to make some other decisions. So I think it is not definitive enough for me to watch it really to get anything out of it. But I think it's disingenuous because the lead guy, because the issue a lot of times that you don't have black women who are out there who are the quote unquote nerds or whatever you want to call it, and there's so many of them, of us, but we don't get to show up in films, to be love interests. Now, white women all the time get to be nerds and lovers, but black women, no. And
The
so
only
that
way,
would have been
the only
great.
way,
Hmm.
Penelope, the only way I would watch is way Cranston watches, which is hate watch it. Because the guy in the trailer said one of the ways that we keep black people safe is by making white people comfortable and make sure they stay comfortable. Okay, full stop. Full stop. Come on.
Well, but you know what? I mean, I'm going to tell you, I don't disagree with that underlying theme. That
Mhm.
when people who are Anglos start to get upset about stuff, black people end up dead. You
So
know,
we got to
the
keep them calm. It's
well,
our.
but
We
that's
are pacify your people.
and that's exactly that. But I think that concept, I mean, it's not not an unknown concept that
Mhm.
when those people start to get crazy, people like us get killed. And so to avoid those people getting crazy, these people have their little society that keeps that from happening, which is an insane thing, even as it is that they need to just learn how to deal with their problems instead of making their problems into our problems. But I think what's problematic, again, like I say, I think it's disingenuous. I
Mhm.
think and it may be that the person who wrote it actually had a great idea and was going to put it out there, and then you get it in somebody's writing room and they eviscerate it. So I don't know what it was that was originally written. It could have been something totally different, but I just think that the concept of, we have this thing and we'll all disappear if you don't make people, if you, don't do your duty and
Mhm.
let this guy, go out with this girl that, he likes. And he said, "Oh, you're trying to tell me to go out with her." Well, no, I was just saying these good things about her, that I like for myself. But I thought that part of it was an interesting concept that when I am talking to you as a black person and to this friend, that if I'm talking up some woman, I'm not talking her up for myself, but
Mhm.
the expectation is that I have to hand her over to you. Guys, same thing. That I'm talking about this guy is so great, so I got to hand him over to you. I mean, for those of you who ever watched the show, what is it, L.A. Law, that what was his name? The actor, Underwood, Blair Underwood, was a hot shot young attorney, but when he had to get a love interest, she was like, this like Anglo woman, probably like 10 years older than him, and
Michelle
she was
Green.
yeah, she was a legal assistant and stuff before she became an attorney or anything, and it's like because that's good enough for you because, of course, all the Anglo attorneys, et cetera, they're hooking up with other high-flying attorneys. But for, a black guy, this is good enough for you.
Mhm.
So that, I mean, and we see it constantly, that concept that, well, this is good enough for you.
I just
That,
wanted to jump in right quick. We actually have, it's been a lot of conversation while people have been listening to you all. I hate
hmm.
so much that you haven't been able to see it,
Oh
but
no.
there were some people who wanted to talk
Sure.
versus texting. So, John, I know that you wanted to. I
Yeah.
did unmute, so
Yep.
you should be heard.
Sure.
Great. First of all, thank you for this wonderful panel, by the way. And uh, I was late. I just been finishing up a panel I did on disability for the convention. And you made a very valid point about how apparently every story now by a African American author has to be about overcoming diversity. And I'm getting really sick of the fact that, as a mentally ill person, that every single mentally ill character, there are two types of mentally ill characters you find. Number one, the one that runs around killing people. And number two is the guy or woman who overcomes adversity. Those are the only two kind of
Hmm.
mentally ill characters you encounter.
Hmm.
And I'm like, could we have some more variety within the portrayals of mental health?
Yeah, I think it would be great to have those stories about relationships. Not, I mean, I'm not saying just like, my friendship, but how you enter a romantic relationship, a sexual relationship. How does that, how is it different? How does it affect you?
Yeah, but the
If you
problem
had to
is
see a
that
film, and
the,
if
the,
as a
me-
person, go ahead,
the
I'm
media
sorry.
is only the media is only interested in your problems, right?
Right. But
They're not interested in your workaday life.
yeah, but that's the
So
thing I would like to see. I like to see how it is that you navigate the world. I don't want to see you have to suffer and be in trauma all the time. I like to see how people navigate the world. Like you say, I have a mental illness. You say, well, how does that make you different from people that don't have a mental illness? How do you navigate the world? How is it that you see things differently or see things exactly the same? You know? And why do people make you feel different? How does it feel when people try to make you feel different or try to make you the same or pigeonhole you to make you feel a certain way? That's what I want to see. I don't want to see the thing that someone creates over and over again, just kind of, you know, the musical chairs of it. I want to see what it really is, how you really feel. How someone has dealt with it. It doesn't have to be some big over the top problem. It could be, a simple thing. You know, I want to address with my partner a certain uh type of I'm not saying it's that right, erotica, a certain sexual position, but I am embarrassed or they are embarrassed or I don't know how best to talk about it, you know, and so tells me just say it this way, but my condition makes it that is very uncomfortable for me. So how do you deal with it? Things that just help you
I,
get through your real life.
I like the comment you made about sometimes when you hear people's voices, you don't know what race they are. When I first joined Color Fandom, we did everything virtually, and I wasn't sure who the black people and who the white people were. And there's a really good episode of All the Family where Archie's being his typical bigoted self, and he's in the hospital, and there's a screen uh, between him and his roommate, and the roommate's speaking in a French accent, and so Archie just assumes he's a Frenchman, and he invites him over to the house for dinner. And then at the end of the episode, they pull away the screen. He's a black Frenchman, and
Hmm.
Archie just invited a black Frenchman over for dinner. I thought that was hilarious.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people had problems with All in the Family when it came out. I was a kid when it was airing. I loved All in the Family. We watched it all the time. And I think because a lot of times when those of us came up in the 60s and 70s, that we had the ability to laugh at ourselves, laugh at each other, and try to get beyond some of these things. I think that nowadays we don't get to do too much of that. We don't get to talk about why someone feels the way they do. They say something is wrong and we want to say, okay, I don't want to hear anything else from you. Instead of just saying, well, why did you say that? Why do you think that?
right, people
Dig
get
deeper.
banned
Hmm.
and canceled.
Canceled, yeah. And we don't talk to each other anymore. And that I really miss.
I don't want you banned. I want to hear what you have to say.
Right. And why you
Keep
think
saying it.
that?
Yeah,
Because
why
if
do you
you're
think?
wrong, I want to be able to say, you believe this because of a fundamental misconception about things. Or, wow, you said that. I never thought of that way. I never thought that that's the reason why you might think that way. And we lose a lot of understanding because we just stop talking.
Right, you may have a stupid point, and with J.D. Salinger writes about Holden Caulfield, they don't put him in the white study section.
Yeah.
They
It's
they, they
just,
put uh, juvenile. I don't what section. Cranston, you're the librarian.
is it
What section
classics
does
or
that
something?
catches in a ride? What section does that go in?
That usually goes under either under just general fiction or it's been elevated to exalted fiction, where it's one of
Hmm.
those things like, that is so special until it transcends everything else. So,
I
Has
which
did not
nothing to
know
do
there
with
was such a
race, though.
term.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know such a term as exalted fiction.
Exalted
Oh
fiction,
my gosh, I have,
like Beowulf or something like that. Or
No,
yeah.
it's like stories that like you can take a genre story like 1984
Uh-huh.
or Animal Farm would be considered basically genre story, science fiction or something like that, or fantasy.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
because they deal with serious social issues or philosophical issues, they get exalted into literature. They're no
Ah.
longer just a
So
whatever.
where's my book on Odysseus for land? Where does
Yeah.
that go?
That's definitely classics. That's definitely
Okay.
pick that up. Yeah.
Okay.
Classics. All right. Well, I mean, I'm looking at our time. Are we
Do you have
done?
another question that somebody had or something?
I was going to see, does anyone else want to just say, you can unmute if you'd like, and then just speak a question if you have one? We'll just wait and see. There were a lot of comments made, more so while y'all were talking. So they look really weird to see them all together now. But this has been such a wonderful panel. Thank you all so much. But as always, it's always very interesting. So
Yes.
yeah, so
Oh, we thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
and we will look for some ticket. Well, y'all talking about some badges.
Yeah, yeah.
But hopefully you all can, if you want to, keep in mind, or people are saying thank you. I'm
Mhm.
reading some of the stuff. Thanks so
Mhm.
much. Great conversation. This is what people are saying on the thread in Discord. Feel free to join us for any of the things we're doing in Discord. We have our schedules. We have everything going later this evening and tomorrow. So
All right, super.
all right.
Right.
Well, thanks so much. I'll send you this recording as soon as I go through the editing process.
All right. Thank you so much again.
Inviting us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Y'all have a wonderful rest of the day.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
the eclipse. Those who can
Oh,
get the
we
eclipse.
will. We
Enjoy
will.
the- All right.
Bye-bye.